A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. And welcome not to 2021, no, not at all. Welcome to 1971, the year when Disney World opened, when Qatar became independent, Apollo 14 headed into space, Greenpeace started. But far more important than any of those, the years that Cap Classique made its debut in South Africa and the Stellenbosch Wine Route kicked off, became formalized, and began what is now known as one of the world's most iconic wine routes. As a result, I'm in as 70-ish a free-loving shirt as I could find. I think this is actually quite modern in somewhere like Pietermaritzburg, but it's basically a 1970s shirt, and it is being worn in celebration of the 1971 launch of both Cap Classique and of the Stellenbosch Wine Route. And we're celebrating those today as we're going to be through the course of the year. Now, I know it is a difficult time to celebrate. It is not a time when we can buy and trade and purchase and move and indulge in alcohol and specifically wine. And that's something we're going to be addressing on the show next week. I'll tell you more about that just a little later. But it is still a year where we can pay tribute to two distinct strands of the South African wine story. We've had such a massive, massive influence. Bubbles, our take on champagne, in my opinion, a take that we've managed to pull off right up to, and in some cases better than, the French standard. And in the Stellenbosch Wine Route, I think as fine a wine route as there is in the world. And I haven't seen all of them, but I spent time in California, I've spent time in Argentina, in Australia, New Zealand, different parts of Europe. And the Stellenbosch Wine Route, it really does set the benchmark. And so I'm really keen on paying tribute to both of them through the course of this year. And we're kicking it off today with two really, really good friends of mine. A little later, we'll bring in Mike Ratcliffe, who is, amongst his many, many, many roles, the chairman of the Stellenbosch Wine Route, and find out what is planned to pay tribute to 50 years of people traversing up and down Stellenbosch and sampling such fine, fine wine. But before we do that, we start with some bubbles and kick off the celebrations, because it's also 50 years since Simonsuch gave us the very first South African Cap Classique. It has now become a South African story well beyond Simonsuch, and we have Cap Classique from all over the wine-growing country. But it was that very first bottle, that very first vintage in 71 that got things started and inspired many people, including my first guest this evening. He is the godfather of Cap Classique in South Africa. He's one of the best-dressed men in the country, and he's one of the great characters of the wine industry. Pieter Ferreira, chairman of Cap Classique South Africa. Good evening. Welcome back to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Hi, Dan. It's always a pleasure. Fantastic. Yes, and what a year it will be for Cap Classique.
Without meaning to put you under pressure, can you tell me what Pieter Ferreira was up to in 1971? Because I don't think you were making Cap Classique just yet.
No, I just started high school, so yeah. But it was sort of the sneaky age of having a glass of bubbles, at that time of the of my life. So yeah. So the birth year of bubbly was also, my introduction to bubbly, drinking it.
And it has become a path of which you are now synonymous, not just here in South Africa, right around the world. Before we jump into the Cap Classique story, and it is such a wonderful story to tell, let's get a quick update on the world of Pieter Ferreira, Graham Beck, and the bubbles that you oversee as cellar master. I heard a rumor, I don't know if you've got insomnia, but you're busy picking at night, is that correct?
Yeah. Can you see the matchsticks in my eyes? It's been long, sort of an ambition and a desire for us at Graham Beck to get into night harvest. We respect that global warming is with us. The whole world is warming up, and to improve quality. So much has been written up about night harvesting. To bring the grapes in at the cooler temperatures of a 24-hour cycle. So. It's been really fascinating. We started on Monday night, and it's early days, but it's phenomenal. There's a certain amount of calm that has come in with the vineyard team. They seem to be far more happier, working in cooler temperatures than in the middle of the day.
So it's a fascinating concept, and I look forward to chatting to you when this particular vintage comes out, and we can look back and see how you think it might have influenced it. But let's move over to the crux of today's conversation, and that is the space with which you are so heavily involved as chairperson. Let's go back to the story, and I think a lot of people watching will know it to some degree or other. You might even have seen our chat with Simon certainly the fabulous Jan Milan just before Christmas, where we talked about the origin story. But go back for those people who aren't 100% clear how it started, why it started, and what kicked off Cap Classique in South Africa.
Yeah, obviously it was started by Frans Milan in 1971, and I think Johan has told such beautiful story when you had him on the show towards the end of last year. You know, Frans Milan was an amazing visionary. I think Mike will talk about the establishment of the Stellenbosch Wine Route as well. He was a phenomenal visionary at that era, and obviously the inkling to increase the potential of selling wine from the estates then, and that's how the routes were born. He obviously thought, well, you know, they needed to have some bubbly as part of their offering, and obviously for celebration. So in 1971, Frans Milan made the first Kaapse from Chenin Blanc, and yeah, that is how Cap Classique came about.
We know now that there is a very clear differential in the names. We can't use champagne. I'm quite happy with that. That's the preserve of a particular corner of France. Was that an issue in 1971?
No, there was no issue, because in South Africa we had sort of an agreement with France that we would never use or have a reference to champagne. So we were in the new world, although we sort of considered old world as well. We were the first country out of Champagne to respect the fact that we have no reference to champagne. And in the later years after Kaapse was made, the words méthode champenoise was used on the label to give the consumer the identity that it is, you know, made in the champenois method, which means it's bottle fermented, which obviously distinguished it. But then in 1995, méthode champenoise was written into the appellation only that wines come from Champagne can be referred to as méthode champenoise. And 14 like-minded people already in 92 saw the writing on the wall, and we said, well, let's work out, you know, something uniquely South African that we can take into the international market.
You've created, and I say you specifically because you're at the forefront of it with Johan and the other visionaries when it comes to South African bubbles, a really entrenched space in our South African wine market. If we go back to 1971, though, and as much as you know, still being at high school, what was the initial reception? Was it a Ken Forrester making Chenin Blanc, what on earth are you thinking? Or was it more of a, this is inspired, let's do more of it, let's get this going?
Well, according to my understanding, you know, after 71, Frans Milan sort of hid the bubbly. You know, I don't know if he was hitting it from his sons like Johan, who knew where it was. So he hid it and he sort of forgot about it. And the story goes that, you know, it sort of surfaced back in 1977. And then from onwards there into the mid-80s, that is when the explosion of other producers starting to produce, which is today Cap Classique. You know, people like Valera joined Boschendal when Achim von Arnhem was still there. And Achim started the winery Pierre Jordan in Franschhoek, and I happen to be his protege out of Franschhoek. And then, you know, it grew from there. But the original constitution of the Cap Classique Association in 1992 was signed by 14 founding members.
We have now a very established space. Those 14 have become far more than just 14, and the range we make, the different styles we make, fantastic. I think at last count, Peter, you yourself are making 72 different Cap Classiques. I might have that wrong by a dozen or two. If we speak very broadly, though, and I think of many of the conversations we've had when trying Pinot Noir or Chardonnay from the Hamiltonada Valley, where people would always make the Burgundy reference, and increasingly I feel there's been a push, and right push, from the winemakers themselves to say, well, we don't really need to be compared with Burgundy, not that we don't like or respect them, but we feel we are established ourselves enough. And I think that that is the same with Cap Classique in South Africa. We don't always need that champagne comparison. In that regard, what is it for you that makes South African Cap Classique stick out? Not necessarily better or worse than a French equivalent, but gives our Cap Classique its identity.
Well, I always say the first thing that comes to mind, and the first thing I do preach about Cap Classique, is you can taste the sunshine. That is the point of differentiation. And we believe that we respect that we are a rainbow nation, and there is a huge spectrum of various varieties that we didn't want to be too prescriptive. If you are speaking to a purist today, you will, that person, he or she, will only speak about Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and on occasion Pinot Meunier. But I do believe the platform for Cap Classique is well established, that we are fully inclusive. We allow people to rather buy into the category and obviously be able to use freely any variety that they can. But as you start specializing, you sort of seeing the bark from the tree, and you're starting to realize which is the better varieties to use.
And that would then lead us rather nicely into your story, because you know these varieties particularly well. You produced the wine, as has been told umpteen times, that Obama drank his immigration, that Mandela drank, that so many world leaders have drunk around the world. Is there a point when you go back over your own personal story with Cap Classique where that light went off and you thought, you know what, I love all the other types of wine, a great glass of a Chardonnay or a Cabernet Sauvignon is fantastic. There's just something about Cap Classique that does it for me?
Yeah, surely. I do have bubbles in my blood, but if the lights go off, we are left in the dark, Dan. But if the light goes on, then you have a perfect idea. But again, I always say, my mantra is we in search of the perfect bubble, and attention to detail is really there. And I think it's, for any winemaker, it's most probably the most satisfying category of wine style that you can produce. It's a little bit like looking into a crystal ball. It's just not made this month, and at the end of the year, it's in the market. It's all about perfecting the product over time with minimum least contacts that the association is consistently moving further, because we all know that extended least contact time definitely brings complexity and much more flavor. So I think, there is many more interesting facets, but I think in essence, that is how one can distinguish, tasting the sunshine and being the better alternative out there if you don't want to do champagne.
We've got a number of people who are watching. We're very grateful for it. Keith Magoli pointing out that I am indeed clean shaven. That was after my wife threatened to leave home if I didn't get rid of the beard that you would have seen on Monday's show. Josephine Couillard, bonjour Dan, nice to see you again. It's lovely to see you too, Josephine. Thanks for tuning in all the way from France. Reginald Peckler, welcome back again, Mr. Bubbles. It's already a bubbly year of 50 years Bubbles celebration. I promised to drink myself up stars for the whole year. What a milestone. Thank you, Reginald, tuning in from Cheetah Plains. Grant Sauls, Graham Beck is top quality. It certainly is, Grant. It certainly is. Daryl Balfour saying a very good evening from Gaborone in Botswana. A man who drinks more than me and Mr. Ferreira put together. Scott Stapelberg, every wine region in the Cape produces great MCC. And from the Newstead Lund Family Vineyards team, we're delighted to be part of the Cap Classique Association and to be producing Cap Classique. And I see Melissa Sutherland there. Here's your Jordan MCC served at my wedding 27 years ago. As you can see from the photo, Melissa got married aged 12. The mention of Piers Jordan, the mention of Newstead Lund watching us at the moment. It was just a small group of you in 1992. This is where we stand now, 50 years on, because we're not just celebrating 5 decades. It's not just simply chalking up a mark, Peter. It's celebrating the fact that the Cap Classique family in South Africa has grown so exponentially and become so diverse, so strong, and just so bloody good at Cap Classique.
Definitely, Dan, obviously we've grown from 14 members. And currently, if you had to analyze the latest Platter book, the 2021 issue, you will see there's around 262 producers that has got either just one or then obviously a collection of Cap Classiques in the market. It will bring Cap Classique to about 400 SKUs, 400 different labels that is available on the local market. We have, over the years, definitely improved the standards of Cap Classique by having our Cap Classique members joining in on an annual base wine tasting, which is a collective where we all get together, we bring our wares, we discuss it in a very humble way, and obviously give some constructive criticism where it's needed. And it's definitely just lifted the bar and definitely the quality for Cap Classique going forward. Today, we as an association have 92 members, and we also, those members actually represent well over 90% of total Cap Classique produced in South Africa. So we're fairly inclusive. If it comes to membership versus the volume of Cap Classique produced.
We have a comment here from the man behind Great Domains, Derek Kilpin, is watching at Peter is winemakers that drink, taste widely and regularly from across the world often lead the pack of what they do on their home soil. Peter, and I think it's a really valuable comment. It's unusual from Derek. It does speak to something that you do really well, and that you're not precious about Graham Beck. You love it, you celebrate it, you're enormously proud of it, but you love drinking other people's wine, not just from South Africa, but around the world, and that does give you such a clear vision of where you want to take your own wine.
Absolutely, Dan. I really put on, first of all, my South African hat. I think we have a place in the international market and we have a beautiful product. And secondly, I live, eat and sleep Cap Classique. I gladly would talk about any Cap Classique out there. It's really the best for the category. And then, if we dial down to the sort of last chapters, then obviously Graham Beck is important. We've just started our 31st vintage here in Robertson. But yeah, I live, eat and sleep. And I think, that's why my nickname is Bubbles. I have it in my blood. We love giving advice because it's all at the end the best for the category, that the category can grow in the proper way and obviously pursue quality at the same time.
And I think important to just to clear that up, the Bubbles nickname relates to the Cap Classique that Peter makes and has nothing to do with Michael Jackson's Monkey, just so we're very clear on that story. So where we stand now at the moment, I look at Robertson, Graham Beck is the headline act, but there are so many great bubbles coming out of the Robertson area. I look at probably your greatest, and not competitor, but I know there's a little bit of gentle ribbing between the two regions. Franschhoek is out some terrific bubbles into Stellenbosch, where it all started. Some great areas. What's next, do you feel, for Cap Classique in South Africa? Where do we go over the next 5-10 years?
Well, according to the SAVA statistics that we analyze on a monthly basis, that we do get, to sort of dissect. If you look at the progress and the growth of Cap Classique, we currently are doubling every 4 years. So it is double-digit growths for the category, which I think no other wine style can boast of that, which is really great. And then, where do we go from here? Our members represent 28 geographical areas in the Western Cape. And I'm very happy that the Lunds from Newstead is tuned in. They have a property in Plettenberg Bay. So I think we keep finding new little geographical areas that has got such potential for growing Cap Classique. So in the next 10 years in the crystal ball, I think we will surely, even in the new normal, we will get back, once we can sell wines again, to a sort of a celebratory mood. The mood is extremely tough at the moment, but I always say, once you've had the first glass of bubbles, the whole world changes. So in the next 10 years, I truly believe we will have more Cap Classique in the international market. Only around currently of total volume, less than 20% of Cap Classiques leave our shores. And if we can get enough people to support people like Grainbeck, who is really strong in the international markets, we're willing to hold hands and grow the category so we are recognized internationally. So I think that is the vision going forward, is to be recognized as a well-established category internationally.
I do love that about Peter. You're always incredibly generous with not just your knowledge, but also your desire to use the Grainbeck brand to help others up and to spread that gospel. You're also spreading the gospel through South Africa and indeed the world over the course of this year. Before we let you get ready for another night of what is planned, sketch out for us how celebrations play out in as much as they're going to be able to in 2021, and what we can do, be it here in South Africa or elsewhere around the world, to get behind Cap Classique, to raise a glass in celebration and be part of the festivities.
Yeah, I think, the pandemic has really sort of put a spanner in the works. It's just halted a few things. But we have created a special 50-year celebration page on the Cap Classique website. And it's very easy to find. If you find that logo on our website, if you click on there, you will see the various events that we have planned. And don't be saddened by the fact that behind every event there is something like a TBC to be confirmed. But it's really, respecting social distancing and the effect that the pandemic has had. It's a plan. The plan is completely there. We cannot roll it out 100%, but surely there is some really amazing things. And it's not only for the local market. We are going to support, as an association, we are going to support Simonsig in their festivities. And the first one that is planned in April, but it is on hold currently, will be like a 2-day festival at Simonsig in the gardens, where people will be able to rub shoulders with great brands alongside with Simonsig as the hosts, and then sit down to a fantastic luncheon in the gardens under the beautiful oak trees at Simonsig. That's sort of the first thing. But yeah, do go to the website, click on the celebrations, and you'll see what is planned. In the international side, we've just recently kicked off with a little tasting hour with some UK journalists. So we've got on plan, we've got events happening in the UK, the Netherlands, Belgium, and currently in Asia. So watch this space. A lot of things that will happen. There's going to be a monthly social media drive. So those who are on social media on various platforms, do take care, because we can fill your house with some bubbles.
Well, we're filling the Nickel House with bubbles at the moment, and we're only able to officially kick this off now. Initially, and this is rarer for you, Peter wanted a challenge where he and I had a bottle of bubbles every single day. Apart from the fact that my bank manager turned that down flat, there are one or two other bottles I need to get through. But what Peter and I are doing, and I will backdate them because I've got my under the belt, is a different bottle of bubbles every week that I will be trying and celebrating Cap Classique with. And we're also going to be doing a lot with Dan Really Likes Wine through the year in celebration of a terrific association with terrific people making terrific wine. And as Amanda de Klerk says, a great association and doing such a fine job to grow the category. Couldn't agree with you more there, Amanda. Peter, we're going to see a lot more of you, not just on the show, but hopefully in person as well through the course of 2021. Thank you for everything you do for Bubbles and for South African wine, more broadly speaking. And I look forward to trading bubbly punches with you week by week throughout the rest of 2021, including the one I'm drinking right now, which is the Grand Blanc 2016. Tragically, and this is a tragedy, it is my last bottle of Graham Beck in the cellar. But just as soon as those restrictions ease, I'll be straight down to Pick and Pay to pick up some more. Peter, thank you, and I look forward to seeing what bubbles you come up with.
Dan, thank you very much. If it wasn't for lockdown and the total ban of moving stocks around, we could look after that. But from the association point of view, we have accepted your challenge. And once we can move the stock, you will get it to the Nickel household. But I also have a toast to do. It is to Cap Classique. If it wasn't for Frans Milan and the Simonsig team in 1971, we definitely won't be where we are today. And I'm doing a toast for the next 50 years of Cap Classique.
Well, there we go. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that in 50 years' time, you will find Pieter Ferreira, no older than he is today, still drinking a bottle or two a day and having a great deal of fun. Peter, always an absolute pleasure. We'll speak to you and have some more bubbles with you again soon.
Dan, thank you for the opportunity. And in the name of bubbles, Cap Classique.
Pieter Ferreira, cellar master out at Graham Beck, and a man who just looks at grapes and they immediately start effervescing, if that is a verb one can use. Big thank you. Check out everything that they're doing with Cap Classique on their website. The full list of events, granted, the first quarter at least is probably going to be held off, but they will keep you posted through their website. We'll keep you posted through Dan Really Likes Wine, and we're looking forward to working closely with the Cap Classique Association through the course of 2021. Melissa Sutherland saying that event at Simonsig sounds lovely. As when it does happen, I'm certainly hoping to be able to get down there. Daryl Balfour with a dose of reality. I'd hope to pick up 2 bottles of MCC to bring with me at Oa Tambo this morning. I need to find the duty-free shops are not allowed to sell alcohol for export. Yep, I don't think you're going to get alcohol anywhere at the moment, unfortunately, Daryl. Certainly not legally, but hopefully you can score a few bottles when you're in Botswana. Josephine Prieur, à la santé pour le Cap Classique magnifique bubbles. And merci bien, Josephine. We should do a champagne tasting with you and compare the Cap Classique at some point. And then Amanda de Klerk just quoting that great comment, when you've had the first glass of bubbles, the whole world changes. Love that, Pieter Ferreira. So Cap Classique has a big year in 2021. And as I said, we'll be supporting it wholeheartedly. And we'll also, Dan Really Likes Wine, will also be celebrating and supporting 50 years of the Stellenbosch Wine Routes. And that is an area that is known right around the world. Stellenbosch has done a terrific job, and they've got the balance right. They've got the marketing right, and they've got the product right. You bring those together in the setting that is Stellenbosch, and it's hardly surprising that results have been so consistently successful for now 5 decades in terms of that wine route. So we're going to chat to the chairman in just a moment, but before we cross to the most debonair gentleman in Stellenbosch, let's have a little look at the Stellenbosch wine routes. Part of me wishes we hadn't actually shown that video. I'm getting Stellenboschitis, which is a medical term for people who are stuck at home in Johannesburg and wish they could be careering about the Stellenbosch wine farms, tasting and sampling and celebrating the terrific wine that comes out of one of the world's great wine regions. Nobody knows it's one of the world's great wine regions better than the chairman. So let's dash across to Mr. Mike Ratcliffe, chairman of Stellenbosch Wine Route. Mike, good evening. Welcome back to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Hi, Dan, and to everyone listening out there in the world of Dan Really Likes Wine. I hope everyone's healthy.
We are indeed. We're healthy, but maybe not quite as cheerful as we could be. You're a man with many interests in the broader wine world. So before we jump into the celebration, let's get just a little dose of realism. The space we find ourselves in at the moment, you represent a huge number of wine estates. We know there are wine estates who are battling, some more than others, depending on their size and the backing they have. But it's a really, really difficult time. We understand some of the reasoning, if not all of it, behind elements of the alcohol ban. Just very quickly, some thoughts from you, from Stellenbosch, on where we stand and what needs to happen as quickly as possible, in your opinion.
Well, I don't think we can mince our words. It certainly is likely the toughest period in the history of the wine industry ever. Having an industry, we have 120 odd members, none of them able to sell their product. Tanks are full, well, not full, but is a lot of wine in tanks, and we've got harvest approaching. So while Stellenbosch tends to rest on a lot of heavy hitting brands, which perhaps are in a better place than some other wineries, make no mistake, it's very tough going out there. And, the only way that this can be resolved is that COVID-19 needs to get resolved. We can blame lawmakers as much as we want, but, I don't think anybody has used the South African government and intelligence or innovation in the same sentence before, so we can't expect to be rescued by government. It is tough. There's very little that we can do, really. And we just need to hope that the alcohol ban gets lifted. And also a huge appeal to all the people that support South African wine around the world. Open a bottle tonight. That will go somewhere to alleviating the stress on the industry at the moment.
Well, we've got a few people who fit that particular bill. I see Lisa Harlow saying that video transported me back to Stellenbosch. Not happy to be stuck in a snowy UK, but drinking plenty of Stellenbosch wine. Thank you, Lisa. I know you're a great champion of South African wine. Mike, you raise a number of points in a very short answer, which we are going to be looking at. I know generally this is a fairly light-hearted show, but next Thursday we will have on the show, amongst others, Siobhan Thompson from Wines of South Africa, Rico Besson from Vinpro, and a few other members of the South African wine community as we try and find some ways forward to address an issue that is not just hitting the wine industry hard, but far more than that. If you read Melu Lambert's latest column, I think it was on the Wines of South Africa website, it articulates very clearly just how much of an impact beyond just the sale of wine this particular ban has. But we do want to try and celebrate today, Mike, and we want to celebrate 50 fabulous years. I'm suspecting that Mike Ratcliffe hadn't quite touched down yet in 1971, but it would have been the formative years of a lady called Norma Ratcliffe, who was a trailblazer. Take us back to 1971, how this particular organization came together, what inspired it, and who the key people were who got us going.
Well, you're quite accurate there. I was about a twinkle in the eye, so to speak, in 1971. But I think it would be important to acknowledge the crossover and also raise a glass to Pieter Ferreira and the Cap Classique Association for their 50 years, also a remarkable achievement. But acknowledge the crossover between the gentleman and the family at Siemens Frans Milan, who launched the first ever Cap Classique, was also one of the founders in the same year of the Stellenbosch Wine Route, together with his friend Neil Hubert of Speer. They went off to Burgundy and got a feeling for organized, what they considered organized tourism at the time, came back, joined up with their friend Sput Sperling of Delheim, and between the three of them, they formalized the creation of the Stellenbosch Wine Route in 1971. So as I often say, the current members, this wine route has gone from strength to strength, but the current members really are standing on the shoulders of giants.
And they are giants who probably didn't realize in 1971 just what they were creating, because the Stellenbosch Wine Route now sits iconically in the world, not just in South Africa. And we'll get to where it is in just a moment. If we can pick up, though, from that 1971 start, just a little more detail, how it came together, how it picked up, and what those initial years were like as the more formalized wine route started to take shape.
Well, by all accounts, there was quite a lot of resistance. Not everybody bought into the vision. Certainly, they had to go push a ball uphill with regards to local administrators. The concept of a wine route was relatively alien, certainly massively innovative at the time. And so I don't think it was as easy as simply putting up a sign. Although there is an iconic photograph of the three of them with some of their friends and family and colleagues putting up the original Stellenbosch Wine Route sign. Just getting the legal framework to be able to put signs depicting the fact that a winery is a member of Stellenbosch Wine Route, once again, I think that took ages for them to actually get the permission to be able to do that. I should also mention that in 1971, there were not that many wineries in Stellenbosch. The fact that we have 120 members now, part of the reason for that, of that incredible growth, is probably because the Stellenbosch region has been organized, and because we have had a 50-year influx of people to Stellenbosch to come into this organized structure, bringing their money, and that's probably contributed, certainly been one of the founding, very important foundation stone of the growth of Stellenbosch as a wine region. I once, as an aside, I've got a video taken in 1977, which was actually a Super 8 movie, where my granddad sat on the bonnet of a bakkie and drove from Stellenbosch all the way to Klapmuts, filming the road. And I can tell you, there weren't that many wineries there. There were just a couple of the stalwarts that are still around, some real founding fathers. It's been a fascinating journey. I wish I had actually been part of it from the beginning.
You do get to be part of it present day, and I think if you were to present an image of Stellenbosch Wine Route 2021 to Mr. Milan, to Mr. Joubert 50 years ago, they'd have written it off as a daft piece of science fiction and thought you'd had a glass or two too many. In 50 years, which is not a huge amount of time, the development of Stellenbosch has been enormous, and there is so much to celebrate about it. The diversity of wine being made, the diversity of what different estates do in terms of their offering. What I would probably take from my outside perspective, though, as great an achievement as any, is just how closely knit the Stellenbosch Wine Route appears to be, how much the winemakers are friends, they work together, they support each other. There's not a sense of, well, if you buy his wine, you're not buying mine, so I'm not going to support him. There really does seem to be a genuinely close-knit community.
Yeah, there is a wonderful sense of unity, and I have to say that is something that I've inherited as chair, and that my board have the luxury of being able to build on top of. If you look back at some of the recent names that have gone before me, great leaders like Ken Forrester, Quibus Basson, Johan Kricher, and many others. These are people that have really built it step by step, and it really is a tribute to not just the founding fathers, but the visionaries who've poured their heart and soul into it over these years. And I do agree with you, Dan. There is definitely a sense of unity. We are working extremely hard to build on that, turn the sense of unity into a sense of community, have us standing side by side, comparing notes, sharing resources. And I'm very pleased to report that despite the difficulties and possibly even the idiosyncrasies of COVID-19, I think that Stellenbosch is moving in the direction of community, which is just wonderful. And perhaps that's what the founding fathers first learned when they went to Burgundy in the late 60s. Burgundy has this wonderful, great sense of community. I hope to be able to perpetuate that.
There is a lot to work with to help you to perpetuate it, led by, as must be the case with any wine route, the wine itself. The marketing benefits from that, and I think you do a terrific marketing job as an entire entity, but it's got to kick off with absolutely fantastic wine. And it's now, I think, very much a space where, not just here in South Africa, we understand Stellenbosch wine, we know it's going to be good. Around the world, people see a bottle of not just South African, but they see Stellenbosch, and more people, I think, genuinely understand, Stellenbosch, that's proper wine territory, that is.
Yeah, that's a building process, and it's, as you say, it's a function of marketing, but the easiest marketing is when you have great product. So we do have the luxury of great product, which kind of lubricates the marketing channels quite nicely. But I think the greatest marketing also comes with a sense of purpose. And a number of years ago, our board took a unanimous decision to change our vision and mission statement. And we actually moved marketing into position number 2 in terms of the importance that we place on our activities. And we've moved socioeconomic development, the upliftment of our people, training of workers into position number 1. I think that's also plays into the sense of community. And frankly, when your workers are trained, you are going to prune better, you're going to pick your grapes better, you're going to manage your grapes better, you're going to make better wines. And I think that will contribute over the longer, certainly medium to long term. That's really going to contribute to building on the level of quality that we already have. But, like anything, you mentioned earlier, 50 years is not very long. Well, I agree with that. Some of the great wines in the world are only starting to build momentum after a couple of 100 years. So we won't need that long, but I think there's definitely a lot of aspirations amongst our board and certainly amongst our members.
And rightly so, because they've got a great success story behind them and a great success story ahead of them. And I'm going to be celebrating it throughout this year, working very closely with Mike, with Elmarie, with the team, as we pay tribute to this great winemaking region. And to that end, the wine that I am keeping myself company with alongside of Mike is this particular wine. And it's chosen very specifically. It is the Simonsich, there we go, the Garland. That is their 2015 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. It's not a wine you're going to drink every day. It's a touch over 1,500 rand a bottle, but it is a glorious Cabernet Sauvignon. And I bring it into the conversation now, Mike, for 2 reasons. One, because it is such a lovely juxtaposition. Simonsich, as you pointed out, being architects of Cap Classique, but also architects of the Stellenbosch Wine Route, and the Malan family to be celebrated and toasted for that. But also because this is a 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon. If you look back over the last decade or two, there's not much Stellenbosch wine that gets people quite as excited quite so quickly as a Cabernet Sauvignon from Stellenbosch in 2015. Where do we go from here, though? You've got, I think Michael Freejohn put a great piece together about not trying to be too specific when we've got so much to offer in our different regions, and Stellenbosch is an ideal example. We're making lovely wine from all sorts of different grapes. We're at a really exciting point, I think, for Stellenbosch. Where do you go now over the next 5-10 years?
I mean, that's a really great question. And we've discussed this a lot at board level amongst our leadership. And, I think we've taken a position that as a board, we need to support the initiatives and the energy of our members. And so Stellenbosch Cabernet is a common denominator amongst a fairly large tranche of the greatest wines from Stellenbosch. And so it naturally has risen up through the ranks, and we have been actively supporting Stellenbosch Cabernet. But as you quite rightly point out, Stellenbosch has a variety of different terroirs. It has two massive, completely ridiculous mountains plonked right in the middle of our terroir. We've got high slopes, middle slopes, bottom slopes. We've got every kind of direction. We've got sedimentary and igneous rocks. And so we have the luxury of being able to produce a great diversity, which doesn't mean that we produce everything. I think it means that we are producing pockets of excellence. One of the trends that I'm watching very closely at the moment is the rise and rise of high altitude Chardonnay on the upper slopes of the Simmonsberg, in Bannock, Botmaskop, Helderberg. There's this wonderful trend of really spectacular, completely ridiculously insane high altitude Chardonnay. But as my good friend Donnie Stakler, and I know a good friend of the show, has pointed out to me, there's also a bit of a Chenin Blanc renaissance going on. And so I don't think it's up to the board to dictate what Stellenbosch is. The board's responsibility is to really focus the energy of our members. And let me also say that perhaps certainly one of the crown jewels of Stellenbosch is Bordeaux blends. We have a quite ridiculous assortment of exceptional wines, but not just quality wines. We have wonderful brands that have got integrity, and brands that really have worked hard over decades to get to where they are. And ultimately, in the wine industry, short-termism isn't really a thing, Dan. You've got to get stuck in and play the game for a long time. That's my opinion, certainly.
Which leads me to issue a challenge, Michael, and I know you like challenges. You're quite good at picking them up. You used a term which is not, I don't think it's redundant, but I'd like to see it phased out because I'm not sure how much we really need it anymore. You used the term there, Bordeaux blend. I see when we're celebrating 100 years of the Stellenbosch Wine Route, interviewing somebody in France talking about the Stellenbosch blends that they make in Bordeaux. I think that's where we need to head. I think slightly tongue-in-cheek, but we're on our own terms. We're making amazing wine, and I think the Stellenbosch blend is a term that needs to see a greater currency going forward.
I think there'd be a lot of people that would agree with you. And one thing I've learned over the years is that the best way to do something is to just start doing it. So we can get together as many think tanks as we want, but what will work will work. If you continually throw things at the wall, eventually something will stick. And so I'm a great believer that the producers that are passionate about producing the so-called Bordeaux blends, let's call it Cabernet-based blends in South Africa and in Stellenbosch, they need to just start referring to them in a more generic manner, Stellenbosch generic. So I completely agree with that. And in the same way that you spoke to Bubbles about the Burgundian influence on champagne, I agree. We've got our own influences, and eventually those, if we continually strive for excellence, those domestic and local influences will rise to the surface.
Well, let's keep on supporting South African wine, as do many of the people watching. Amanda de Klerk, beauty all round, Stellenbosch Wine Route, celebrating 50 years. Elmarie Rabi, seen on LinkedIn today. Stellenbosch is the closest to heaven you will ever encounter here on earth, and that's not just Mike in his swimwear by the side of a pool. Lisa Harlow, Stellenbosch really is one of the great wine regions of the world, and for tourists, it's so well organized, great wines, and a picture postcard. and Angela Lloyd, one of the doyens of the South African wine industry. It's great to have been here since the start of Cap Classique and Stellenbosch Wine Route and seen how both have grown in size and reputation since then. They both continue on a path of quality and success. I have no doubt that exactly that will happen. On that question, though, of going forward, Mike, the same question I put to Pieter Ferreira with Cap Classique. We have a year that is a little hazy in terms of what exactly can and can't happen, but in as much as you're able to pinpoint and to highlight, what can we look forward to in celebration of 50 years of Stellenbosch Wine Routes this year? What can we get involved with? And how can we add glasses of Stellenbosch blends and raise them in celebration?
Well, we have got a lot planned, and our plans are, as Peter said, TBC, but we are planning actively. In Stellenbosch, the town, from a tourism perspective, fully intends launching a massive biking festival, a running festival, a 10-day fine wine and food extravaganza in August. So there's no shortage of planning, and the planning is far down the line. We will certainly be using 2021, the fact that the wine route is celebrating 50 years, we'll be certainly using it unplanned as a morale booster, because we all need a bit of morale boosting, but also as a unifying factor to not just unify the wine industry, but pull the entire town around the celebration of 50 years. Everything from the university, which will be going back apparently starting next week, between the end of January and March. We will also have municipalities celebrating with us, and wherever possible, we will be using the 50-year anniversary as a theme. I know this doesn't sound too compelling, but as you know, it's very difficult to plan next week, never mind 6 months from now. So I would say that the massive centerpiece for the year will be the Stellenbosch Fine Wine and Food Festival, which currently is planned to coincide with the Lions Tour and culminate on the same day as the Cape Town Test. Let's see what happens there. So there are a lot of plans. We are organized. Our board is well structured and representative, and I think that we'll be able to move forward. We don't need to start from the beginning. We're ready to go, so we can drop the hammer the second we get the go ahead, and that's pretty exciting stuff.
I've got no doubt there will be plenty to play out. Understandably, you can't nail down everything just yet. But there will be a lot to celebrate, both from Stellenbosch Wine Route and from Cap Classique in 2021. And to that end, a lovely note for you from the Cap Classique Association, Mike. For a morale booster, drink some Cap Classique. A lovely touch from our earlier crew of guests today. Mike, I'm going to leave you with a challenge on top of the one I've already given you to bring the Stellenbosch blend into our lexicon, and it's very similar to the one that I'm having with Mr. Bubbles. Each week with him, I'm going to have a different bottle of Bubbles, and with you each week, I'm going to open a different bottle of Stellenbosch wine and celebrate with it. I know you do that twice a day anyway, but it'll just be a small part of what Dan Really Likes Wine is really looking forward to doing in terms of celebrating 50 years of one of the world's great wine regions.
Challenge accepted. And could I leave you, Mr. Nicol, with a prediction?
Please do.
My prediction is that one of the greatly undervalued assets of the Stellenbosch wine region, but frankly also of the South African wine industry, is our wonderful, exceptional, great heritage brands, the brands that have been around for a long time. And my prediction is that in 10 years' time, we will be looking back at the rise and rise of heritage brands and said, how did we ever let those brands go? So there you go. That's my 10-year prediction, if there is such a thing.
All right. No specific reference to Alto. We'll just see how they all pick up and go. Mike Ratcliffe, thank you. I know we're going to be working closely together. I know you're also part of a very cool and exciting wine conference, which we're hoping to chat about on the show with the organizers in the next couple of weeks. Keep up the great work, you and your team. And I know it goes without saying, but Dan Really Likes Wine is right behind 50 years of Stellenbosch Wine Routes, as we are Cap Classique. And look, if it means I have to drink Stellenbosch wine every single day, then that's the kind of sacrifice, Mike, that I'm willing to make. But thanks for joining us. Appreciate the time, and good luck for 2021.
Thanks, Dan.
And on that note, I have to tell you, just before I thank Mike once more, this bottle of the Garland is sensational. My only sadness is I've opened it now. I might have to order some more because it is really drinking beautifully. But gee, it has got time to go. It's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon from Simonster, and it is just rich and luscious and fruity and glorious. And that's the rest of my evening taken care of, along with my bottle of Graham Beck. Although sadly, I suspect once my wife gets home from work, she'll flatten the red because she is a big Cabernet Sauvignon fan. Josephine Prieur, notre ami de France. Thank you for all the producers of Stellenbosch who always receive me and my friends in a very friendly and professional way. And you are a community. And I think as much as that applies to Stellenbosch, it applies to our wine community as a whole. And it really is one of the great aspects of the South African wine industry, an industry that has cause for celebration, the challenges at the moment notwithstanding, and that celebration is 50 years of Cap Classique and 50 years of the Stellenbosch Wine Route. So huge thank you to Pieter Ferreira and to Mike Ratcliffe. Now, I know you can't buy wine at the moment. Geesh, it's annoying and irritating, and we sort of kind of understand the reasons why, but not entirely, and I'll speak about that in a moment. But what you can do is prepare for when we can buy wine again, and you can head straight on to the Pick n Pay website and order your wine online if you don't want to get out and about, if you want to stay home, and rightly so. Then you simply need to be a member of the Pick n Pay Wine Club. SMS your smart shopper number to 36775, free of charge to join that club. And when you're buying wine, 6 bottles or more will be free of charge in terms of delivery. 3 times the smart shopper point. You get 20% off 10 great wines and 25% off a selected case and a magnum every single month, as well as some pretty cool events and competitions. So no reason not to be part of a member because it is free of charge. And as soon as we can buy wine again, our estates, our brands, our wineries really do need your support. And remember, Pick n Pay have a commitment to buy 25 million bottles of wine to pass on to you through the course of 2021. So what is coming up? Well, next week on Monday, I will be joined by Mark Leroux from Waterford and the wonderful Erica Obermeyer from Erica Obermeyer Wines, as we give you the idiot's guide to harvest. How does it work? What do you do? How do you know when you pick your grape? Is it right? It looks okay, but how do you actually know? Well, they'll both be telling me. And the reason I've got the two of them, Mark from a very established estate in Waterford, but Erica buys all her grapes in from all over the place. How does that work? How does she know where to get them, how to get them, when to pick them, who decides when to pick them? I'm fascinated by it, and I don't know that much about it. So I'm really looking forward to Monday. And we'll also have a glass of Mark Leroux's own brand. Yes, he makes the Waterford wines, but he's got his own brand as well. I'll be trying that for the very first time on Dan Really Likes Wine. And then please pencil in next Thursday. It'll be a slightly more serious discussion, but it's a desperately, desperately important one as we talk to Rico Basson from Vinpro, representing all of our wine estates, all of our wineries. And we'll also be talking to Siobhan Thompson from Wines of South Africa and speaking to a couple of other people in the wine industry. What is the situation with our wine ban, our alcohol ban? How much of an impact is it having? Spoiler alert, a lot. How do we escape from it? How do we recover from it? What can we do to find a middle ground? Because we understand that there are problems with alcohol consumption in South Africa, but simply saying that alcohol in general and wine in particular are responsible for all of them is baby out with the bathwater. It's cork out with the wine. We've got to do better than that for the sake of so many people in the industry. So that is next Thursday. Next Monday, The Idiot's Guide to Wine coming out. It might even be out today. I need to check with Ronaldo, my producer. But a very cool interview with Doug Ryder from the Team Quebecer, who've just partnered up with L'Avenir and their Tour de France cycling team. And next week, South Africa's great sommelier Gareth Ferreira, who's at Claire Smythe's Core restaurant. We'll be talking to him over in the UK. Plus, many other internationals coming up. In the interim, I know you can't buy wine, but if you're overseas, please keep drinking. Get your friends to drink it. Help our industry. And believe me, you'll love what you get because it's South African wine and it's fantastic. Cheers to Stellenbosch. Cheers to Cap Classique. We'll see you again Monday evening with The Idiot's Guide to Harvesting with Mark Leroux and Erica Obermeyer. In the interim, if you're in South Africa, drink what's left. If you're overseas, drink even more. We'll see you next week. Cheers.